What's up, guys? I've seen a lot of LINQ queries in the last few years that have just been horrible to look at and even worse to work with. LINQ is one of those things that, despite its age, is still not well understood, and that means that it's not being used properly or efficiently. The biggest thing I noticed is the lack of using LINQ's built-in features to help write manageable queries. So in this episode, I'm going to show you two important and useful LINQ keywords that will change how you write your LINQ queries in the future. Now, these keywords would be let and into. Let gives us the ability to introduce variables in our queries. These variables can hold scalar values, such as integers and also object instances. So the first advantage of the let keyword is the same as regular variables, being that we can name and then later reference an expression or value. The second advantage is that it allows us to break up the complexity in our where clauses and projections. There can also be a performance benefit by using let to create a variable that'll act as a cache for a complex operation or expression result when that result is used more than once throughout the query. So let's really easy to work with. So let's go ahead and look at an example. So the first thing we need to do is create a collection that we can query against. And we'll do that using enumerable.range, which is going to create a collection of integers between 1 to 100. Then let's set up our query, and let's query for only even numbers. And we'll do this using n mod 2 is equal to 0, select n. Now, this code is pretty simple, so why do we need to change it at all? But if you think about this, this query here might not be easily recognizable to somebody coming in looking at this code later on. It could definitely be much more readable. So let's use let and introduce a variable called isEven, and we'll set it to the value of n mod 2 is equal to 0, which will end up being a Boolean. And then in the where clause, we'll just query against the isEven. Now we could even go as far as introducing an additional variable called isOdd and set it to the opposite of isEven. So what we're doing is we're creating two variables and then using those variables throughout the query. Even in the other let declarations, we can use previous let declarations to determine the value. So again, we're creating variables using the let keyword, and we're using them inside of our where clause, and we can even use them in our projection. And that's the let keyword. It's as simple as that. Now again, this is a very simple query. It's a very simple example that we're going over, but you could see the potential power of using the let keyword to introduce variables in your queries for more complex operations or more complex queries that you might come against. Into lets us continue a query after a projection. Basically, it lets us break up complex queries into multiple continuous queries by moving the final projection of one query into a new query context. Now, that probably seems really confusing, but it's not that bad. So let's look at an example and it'll make more sense. Okay, so let's look at the into keyword, and we're going to create a query that looks up odd numbers that are also multiples of 5. So we'll start off by n mod 5 is equal to 0. That's going to get us any numbers from our collection of numbers that are multiples of 5, so 5, 10, 15, etc. And then we'll just select n. But we also need to make sure that these numbers are also odd numbers, because even though 5 and 10 are multiples of 5, 10 is an even number. So now we need to filter out odd numbers. And we'll just do this by using n mod 2 is not equal to 0. But again, looking at this query, this is not clearly obvious what's going on here. Now, we could, again, use let to introduce some variables that would allow us to define a name for what these expressions are and what they mean. And we can also break this query up into multiple continuous queries. So let's go ahead and do that, because that's the point of this example. So we've selected our collection of numbers that are multiples of 5, and using the INTO keyword, let's take our projection of those multiples and move them into the context of a new query. So we'll use INTO multiples of 5, and multiples of 5 now becomes our new range value. And we can go ahead and query against that. Multiples of 5 mod 2 is not equal to 0. So now what we've done is we've broken this query up into 2 queries by using the INTO keyword. Now one thing to notice here is that because we're in a new context, the previous context is not available. So n, which is from our upper query, is not going to be available. So for example, if we added a and n is equal to 10, get an error here because it doesn't recognize n, because n is not in the context. And of course, in each of these queries, you can use let to make this query a little more readable. So again, INTO lets us move the final projection of one query, which would be this select n here, into the context of a new query, which would be this guy here, using simply the INTO keyword. And you notice that the auto format indented this. So if we were to go ahead and do another one, you would see this one got indented as well. So it's nested. So it automatically gets indented for us, and we can easily see what's going on with each of these queries. All right, that's it for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, and if you like this episode, click that like button or leave a comment and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.